Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep, really deep, into Infosys Ltd.
Should be interesting.
You bet. You know, the research you sent over, especially that financial breakdown from Screener, there's some really fascinating stuff in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to uncover some serious insights today about this Indian tech giant.
Sounds good.
So, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think for anyone who might not be, totally up on their Indian IT companies,
Right.
what exactly is Infosys? Can you give us a quick overview?
Well, they're a major player, a big one in the digital world, consulting, technology, outsourcing, and digital transformation. That's really their bread and butter. Basically, they're helping companies navigate this crazy tech-driven world.
Yeah, makes sense.
They're global, of course, but have a really strong presence in India. Like, they're the second largest IT company there.
Whoa, second largest.
Yeah, right behind Tata Consultancy Services.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. And speaking of, digital transformation and all that,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild that more than half of Infosys revenue comes from digital services.
It is.
Something like 57%,
Yeah,
right?
around there.
So what does that actually look like? What kinds of services are we talking about here?
Well, digital services, it's a pretty broad term, but think artificial intelligence, big data,
Oh, sure.
Internet of Things, cloud migration, cybersecurity, all those buzzwords you hear all the time.
Right.
Infosys is really diving headfirst into all of that, helping their clients use these technologies to improve, improve pretty much everything. Customer experiences, their own outdated tech systems, you name it.
So they're not just like riding the wave, they're actually like shaping the digital landscape.
Exactly, yeah.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk numbers, shall we? Your research highlighted some pretty interesting financial details, especially about their stock. Could you break those down for us a little?
Sure. So first off, their market cap is huge. I mean, like 7,058,018 crore. And when you pulled this data, the stock was trading at 1,826.
Okay.
The high and low for the year were 1,991 and 1,358.
Gotcha.
And then there's the PE ratio.
PE ratio.
Which basically tells us how much investors are willing to pay for each rupee of earnings.
Right.
And for Infosys, that number is sitting at 28.1.
That's pretty
Which is pretty high, actually, compared to the industry average. So it seems like investors are feeling pretty good about Infosys's future growth potential.
betting on them for the long haul, huh?
Seems like it.
Okay, so what about book value? Where does that come in?
Right. So book value is basically the company's net worth, but per share. And for Infosys, that's 218. And, for those investors looking for income, that 2.08% dividend yield is probably pretty attractive. Basically, for every 100 invested, you'd get about 2.08% back annually, just in dividends.
Not bad. Now, you also highlighted Infosys's ROCE and ROE.
Oh, yeah.
Which I know stand for return on capital employed and return on equity.
Right.
But remind me why those are so important.
Well, they're key indicators for, how profitable a company is and how effectively they're using their resources. And for Infosys, their ROCE is a pretty impressive 40%.
40%.
Yeah, so they're generating a good return for every rupee invested. It's much higher than a lot of their competitors, so they're doing something right.
Wow.
And their ROE is also strong at 31.8%.
Okay.
Which basically tells us they're using shareholder investments effectively to generate profit.
So those are definitely positive signs. That's good to hear. But while Infosys seems to be doing pretty well, the Screener data also pointed out some potential concerns.
Right. I mean, every company has its strengths and weaknesses. And, while a healthy return on equity is a plus, the fact that their stock is trading at 8.38 times its book value, that could raise some eyebrows.
Why is that? What does that mean for someone who's thinking about, investing in Infosys?
It means the market is valuing them way higher than their accounting net worth. It could be a sign of strong growth potential, sure.
Right.
But it also suggests the stock might be overvalued, which means there's a risk of the price dropping. It's something to think about.
Yeah, definitely something to weighing the rewards against the risks. Was another concern that you noticed.
Well, the data also flagged that Infosys's promoter holding is kind of low.
Low.
Yeah, only 14.4%.
Yeah, exactly. Amy's promoter holding.
It's the percentage of shares owned by the company's founders or key management.
Oh, I see.
So a low percentage is not always a red flag, but
But it's something to pay attention to.
right. It could mean those closest to the company aren't as confident about the future or maybe not as committed.
Interesting.
But, there could be other reasons. It's important to, do your own research before making any decisions.
Right. Don't just take these data points at face value. Do your homework.
Absolutely.
Speaking of looking at the bigger picture, who are Infosys's main competitors?
Well, the IT industry is super competitive, especially in India.
Oh, I bet.
Like we said, Tata Consultancy Services is the top dog there. But there are other big players, too. Wipro, HCL Technologies, Tech Mahindra, even global companies like Accenture. They're all vying for market share.
A real global tech showdown.
Yeah, pretty much.
So to get a sense of their recent performance, let's take a look at their quarterly results.
Okay.
Are there any trends that we should be aware of?
Well, if you look at their consolidated quarterly results, which is, all their subsidiaries and everything,
Right.
there's a pretty consistent upward trend in revenue.
Oh, they're growing.
Yeah, generally. And their operating profits generally positive too, though there are some ups and downs, of course.
Okay, steady growth overall. That's encouraging.
Yeah.
But what about their financial stability long term? Can we take a look at their balance sheet to see what's going on behind the scenes?
Sure. Think of the balance sheet as a financial snapshot. Shows what they own, their assets, and what they owe, their liabilities.
Right.
And for Infosys, their total assets have grown significantly over the years.
Okay.
Which is a good sign, of course. But their total liabilities have also been increasing.
Wait, liabilities increasing. Isn't that a bad thing?
Not always, no. It's normal for liabilities to go up as a company grows.
I guess that makes sense.
The important thing is that assets are growing faster, or at least keeping pace. If liabilities are growing way faster, that could be a sign of trouble.
Okay, I see. Now, to me, cash flow has always been like a vital sign for a company. Are they bringing in enough cash to keep things running and fuel their growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Cash flow it's the lifeblood. It tells us how much actual cash is moving in and out, not just profits on paper.
Okay.
And if we look at Infosys's consolidated cash flow statement, their net cash flow, it goes up and down from year to year, but there have been periods of really good positive cash flow.
Positive cash flows, that's what we want to touch.
That exactly. It means they're not just profitable, they're actually generating cash from their actual operations.
That's a relief. Okay, so now I know financial ratios can be, they can be a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But they can also reveal a lot, right?
They can.
So are there any key ratios we should focus on to understand Infosys better?
Let's keep it simple.
Okay.
And focus on two: debtor days and ROCE percent. We talked about debtor days earlier. It tells us how long it takes them to collect payments.
Right. The quicker the better.
Exactly. And then that 40% ROCE. That really underscores how good Infosys is at generating returns on their capital.
They're using their resources well.
They are, which is good news for investors.
Absolutely. Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about the shareholders.
Okay.
Who owns Infosys?
Yeah.
And how has that ownership changed over time?
All right, if we look at the shareholding pattern section, we can see that promoter holding has been around 14-15% in recent years.
Which, goes back to that concern we were talking about earlier, about that relatively low promoter holding.
Exactly, yeah. And another interesting trend is the changes in holdings of foreign institutional investors, or FIIs, and domestic institutional investors, DIs.
Oh, interesting.
We see some fluctuations, but generally FIIs have had a pretty big stake in Infosys, although it's actually decreased recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and on the other hand, DII holdings have been increasing, so there's growing interest from Indian institutional investors.
So it's kind of like a tug of war.
Yeah, kind of.
Between foreign and domestic investors.
Yeah.
With those closest to the company holding a relatively small piece of the pie. That's fascinating.
It is. Look at those optional documents. Especially that thing about AI adoption and marketing.
You know me too well. But before we go there, I'm still kind of hung up on some of those financials.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like is there anything else we can glean from those those tables, those numbers?
Well, if you dig into those quarterly results tables, you can really see the breakdown of how Infosys is, making money, spending money, all of that. Over time, you can see trends in their sales, their operating profit, even how much they're paying in taxes. And remember, all those figures, they're in crores of rupees.
Right. So we're not talking small change here.
No, not at all.
Okay. So speaking of those financials, can we go back to the balance sheet for a second?
Sure.
There was something there that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
I noticed that Infosys has like a pretty substantial amount of investments.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean they're like investing in other companies, or
It could be.
Okay.
It could be stocks, bonds, maybe even direct investments in other companies.
Interesting.
It's a good sign that they're not just sitting on cash,
Yeah.
They're looking for ways to grow. It's a forward-thinking approach.
So savvy investors too. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Confession time. Those cash flow statements always kind of freak me out a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Can you give me like a cash flow 101 crash course?
Sure. Think of cash flow as like the lifeblood of a company. It's about the actual cash, the money coming in and going out, not just what their, accounting profits look like.
Right.
And those tables, those cash flows tables, you'll see categories like cash from operating activities, cash from investing activities, and cash from financing activities.
Okay.
And each of those tells a different part of the story.
So what's the bottom line? What are the good signs, the bad signs when we look at cash flow?
Ideally, a healthy company should be generating positive cash flow from their, core operations. That's the cash from operating activities line. If that's negative consistently, that could be a problem.
Yeah, so they need to be making money from what they actually do.
Exactly. Not just, selling off assets or taking on more debt.
Got it. Okay, so now those ratios tables.
Oh, yeah.
I love a good ratio, but there are so many.
I know, it's a lot.
How do we even begin to prioritize? Which ones are the most important for understanding Infosys?
Well, it depends on what you're focusing on, but a couple of key ratios to keep in mind would be debtor days, which we talked about, and then the inventory turnover ratio.
We already talked about debtor days, but remind me, why is inventory turnover important? Especially for a tech company like Infosys, where they don't really have, physical inventory.
Well, even though they don't have, boxes of stuff sitting in a warehouse,
Right.
Their projects, the time it takes to complete them, that can be considered a form of inventory.
Oh, interesting.
So this ratio, this inventory turnover ratio, it tells us how quickly they're turning those projects into revenue.
Gotcha. So higher is better, right? If they're turning over that inventory faster, it means they're more efficient.
Exactly. Now, we also talked about shareholding pattern earlier, specifically the low promoter holding.
Right.
But there's another layer to consider here.
Okay.
We can look at the breakdown between different types of investors. You'll see categories like promoter, FEI, DII, and then just the general public.
Mm-hmm.
The balance between those, it can tell you a lot about who really holds the power in the company.
Interesting.
Like if you have a high concentration of ownership among a few big institutions, those institutions they have a lot of say in how the company's run.
It's like a whole power dynamic playing out.
It is.
Okay, so enough about financials for now.
No.
Let's indulge my my inner geek for a minute. Let's talk about those optional documents. The ones you sent over.
Right.
What kind of insights can we get from those?
Those documents can really give you a deeper understanding of Infosys, beyond just the numbers. For example, there are annual reports, there are credit rating reports, there are even transcripts of their earnings calls.
What's an earnings call?
Oh, that's where the company's executives, they discuss their performance with analysts and investors.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a behind the scenes look at how they operate, what they're thinking.
I like that.
And then there was that Infosys CMO radar announcement, the one about AI and marketing.
Oh, right. Yeah, that one caught my eye too.
That one highlights how Infosys is really embracing new technology. The report says that that a surprising 73% of enterprises have already, incorporated AI, including those generative AI tools, into their marketing strategies.
Wow.
Yeah. And what's even more interesting, 52% of those companies, they're actually seeing positive results from using AI in marketing.
Wow. So it's not just hype, it's actually working.
It seems to be.
That's pretty cool. So Infosys is not only, using these technologies themselves, but they're also helping their clients, their customers, to do the same.
Exactly.
So they're really on the front lines of all this stuff.
It's not just about using the latest technology, it's about using it strategically to get real results.
Right, right. It's not about the tech itself, it's how you use it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what else, what other kind of treasures can we uncover in these documents?
Well, there are announcements about new partnerships. There's information about their sustainability initiatives, updates on the legal and regulatory landscape. You can even find details about their employee stock ownership plans.
So it really gives you a glimpse into like the company culture, how they treat their employees.
Yeah, I think so.
It's amazing how much information is out there if you know where to look.
It is.
And these documents really provide like a window into a company's soul, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But we could probably spend hours going through all this.
We could.
So let's try to summarize a little bit. What are the big takeaways? What should our listeners remember about Infosys after this deep dive?
Well, we've definitely uncovered a lot, but if I had to sum it up, I'd say Infosys is a company with a lot of potential,
Okay.
but also some areas that, maybe warrant a closer look.
Right.
They're clearly a leader in the IT services industry,
Yeah.
especially with their focus on digital transformation and those really impressive financials.
Right. They're definitely a force to be reckoned with.
They are.
But you're saying there are some potential red flags too.
Well, there's some things to keep in mind, like that low promoter holding.
Right.
That raises questions about, how committed those closest to the company really are. And, while their financials look good overall, we have to remember that the tech industry, it's incredibly fast-paced. What works today might not work tomorrow.
Right. Things change so quickly. So they got to be able to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely.
To survive. Okay,
Yeah.
so this brings us to that thought-provoking question that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
What's something that our listeners can ponder as they learn more about Infosys?
Well, we've seen that Infosys is really betting big on digital services.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, are those bets going to pay off in the long run?
Good question.
Are they investing in the right areas to stay ahead? And what about, the competition
Right.
from other tech giants, both in India and globally?
Yeah.
Those are all things to think about.
So it's not just about like understanding where they are today. It's about like anticipating where they might be headed in the future. What are their long-term prospects? It's a fascinating puzzle.
It really is. And that's the beauty of it all.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers. You gotta dig deeper. You gotta ask the right questions. You gotta be willing to challenge your own assumptions.
And that's what the deep dive is all about.
It is
Giving you the tools and the insights to form your own opinions.
Absolutely. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to help you think critically and independently.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Wrap up this deep dive into Infosys and give our listeners a clear picture of what we've learned.
Yeah, sounds good.
And hopefully leave them with some food for thought to kind of continue exploring this really interesting company.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time digging into Infosys, their business model, their financials, their competition, and even those really insightful documents that you provided.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the big takeaways? What should our listeners remember about Infosys after this deep dive?
I think the main thing is that Infosys is a company at a crossroads.
Okay.
They've built a really strong foundation, as a leader in the IT services world, especially with their focus on digital transformation and those financials. Those are impressive.
Right. They're not a company to ignore.
Yeah.
But you're saying there are some potential issues as well.
There are definitely some things to keep in mind.
Okay.
That that low promoter holding, for instance,
Right, right.
raises some questions about how committed the people closest to the company really are.
Yeah.
And while their financials look strong overall, we can't forget how fast the tech industry moves.
Yeah.
What works today might not work tomorrow.
Right. It's constantly changing.
Constantly.
So they have to be able to adapt.
Yeah, if they want to stay ahead, which brings us to that thought-provoking question.
Right. The one you mentioned earlier.
What can our listeners kind of ponder as they learn more about Infosys?
Yeah.
Here's what I think is really interesting. We saw that Infosys is really going all in on digital services, but are those bets really going to pay off
That's a good question.
long term?
Yeah.
You know, are they investing in the right places to stay ahead of the curve?
Right.
And what about that competitive pressure from other big tech companies, both in India and worldwide?
Yeah, they're not the only ones playing this game.
Exactly. So it's not just about, understanding where Infosys is right now. It's about trying to figure out where they might be going.
Their future, yeah. What's their trajectory?
Yeah. It's a puzzle.
It really is.
But that's what makes it so interesting.
I agree.
There's no easy answer. You really have to dig deep, ask the right questions, and be open to being wrong.
Mm-hmm. Challenge your assumptions. Well, I think that's what the deep dive is all about.
It is.
Giving you the information and the insights to make up your own mind.
Absolutely. We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to help you think for yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our Infosys deep dive.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
and hopefully we've given you, you our listeners, a good starting point to continue exploring this company. It's a complex one. It's an interesting one, but remember, this is just the beginning. There's always more to learn. There's always more to discover, and there's always more to question.
Always.
So thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of Infosys.
It's been fun.
And we will be back soon with another deep dive into a whole new topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those questions.